What's the best welcome that you can ever remember having when you visited somebody's home? You might want to think about that this week. Was it the smiles and the hugs that made you feel welcome? Was it wonderful food? Or was it a special gift? Especially when the royal family visit somewhere, we get used to seeing them, don't we, on the telly? Those very formal welcomes that display the traditions and customs of different places all over the world. In the Philippines, some young people greet their elders by making a slight bow whilst taking the older person's right hand and bringing it up until the elder's knuckles brush the young person's forehead. In New Zealand, you may well have seen the Maori custom of welcome called the hongi. And this involves touching or rubbing noses when they meet, which is supposed to symbolise them giving you a breath of life. And can you remember the first time you went into our church? What sort of a welcome did you get there? Good or bad? And yet you stayed, which either means you're forgiving and you've got years of experience of church people, or that you appreciated the effort people made to make you feel comfortable and welcome when you were new to the community. Earlier this year, when I was having some time away from St Mark's, I had the opportunity to visit a couple of churches not too far away from me in Penistone, and it was very interesting to be on the other side of the welcome. I won't name the churches, but I had varying experiences. From one where a small congregation were clearly not used to having any new visitors. Nobody spoke to me or explained anything. In fact, nobody spoke at all. And if I hadn't known what was to come, I would have been bewildered following that early morning BCP communion service. It did make me want to giggle when it got to the collection, in which they handed around a very beautifully embroidered bag round the circle that you put your money in. But usually, being the one giving the communion, I'd left my bag and purse in the car outside. But the look some of them gave me when I had to say, "I'm sorry, I haven't got anything on me," and pass the bag round was priceless and not very welcoming. Conversely, at another church, in their main morning service, although it was still fairly traditional, the kids were talking and colouring and playing in a side aisle throughout the service, which if I'd brought small children would have been a massive relief, but it just added to the relaxed and homely atmosphere. There were still times of quiet, even silence, and reverence when it came to going up for communion, but the warmth of people's smiles, invitations to come to something later in the week, all added to a sense of feeling very welcome here, even though I was a stranger and they knew nothing about me. It really does make a huge difference though, doesn't it? If we're welcomed as we are, then we feel able to be ourselves. If we feel unwelcome, then we're tense and worried about feeling judged by others, too self-conscious to join in freely with worship. How can we hope to connect with God in the middle of all that? And how can we fulfill our calling as Jesus' disciples? In Matthew 10, Jesus tells us what he expects of his disciples. His disciples are to carry out their mission to preach and teach and heal. They are to dress simply. They are to expect persecutions by government and family. They're to pick up their crosses and follow Christ. They're to love God more than their family. But then comes the final instruction. Whoever welcomes you welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. It's not simply about us welcoming people to a building, is it? Or making them feel welcome into a church family. It's very much about us being the welcome from God that they were probably looking for most when they decided to come. So how can we make sure that we don't get in the way of God's welcome to others? Because sometimes we Christians are the ones who get in the way most, I'm afraid, if we're honest, aren't we? If you're watching and listening to this at home and you've never actually been into St Mark's, then you are so welcome. But we consider ourselves to be the church as a group of people outside the building, in fact, wherever we are. You don't even have to come into the building to join our church family. But having said that, do try us when we're allowed to open again, or join us anytime online. And please God, we hope that you do feel welcome, because we aren't perfect, far from it, but we do want to welcome you. Now, we have some fairly standard cards inside church that new visitors who come can fill in, just so that if you'd like some more information or a visit or to find out more about something that's going off, we can arrange it, just to help you feel more welcome and find out more about the community. These are a few examples of welcome cards from other churches around the diocese. This is actually from one in Leeds, inviting people to student teas. This is a welcome invitation to a communion service at St Martin in the Fields. These are some leaflets from a church in Leeds. I quite like that one because, being a bit of a control freak, it tells me exactly what happens when in the service and why it's happening and what happens at what time, so I really like that one. But the fact it just says hello on the front feels friendly as well. And some more from elsewhere in our diocese. Different ones for different services. Some with more pictures than others, but always a place to put your details and tell them a bit about what you're interested in, so that they can get back in touch with you. But I wonder, now that we're being church more outside the building than inside at the moment, if we could have some welcome cards that we could give out wherever we are. So if you're at work or queuing outside a shop somewhere and church or God just happens to come up in your conversation, you could give the person one of our welcome cards there and then to invite them to have a look at the website, or even come to an event when things get back on track. If we all had a couple of cards in our bag or pocket whenever we went out during the week, we'd be ready to join in with God's welcome to people anytime, anywhere, wouldn't we? I wonder if any of you could design us a new one. It'd be great to start our new normal, return to church life, in whatever form that may take, with an even better and brighter welcome for people. So if you're feeling creative, send in a design to stmarksgrenoside@gmail.com, or post a design under the church door if you're passing. It needs to have some space for basic contact details on, but anything else is up to you. What would make you feel welcome if you wanted to join the St Mark's community? If you want to send us a digital version, that's absolutely fine too. And then perhaps we can turn them into little postcards or smaller things that we can all carry wherever we are, to give others as invitations of welcome to St Mark's, not just to put in church. But what about our welcome in other ways in this new world that we're living in? Many folk might find us through our website, and Jane and others have spent huge amounts of time developing what we already have. But if you've got a talent or design for IT and you want to join in, then just say. And then there's our notice board outside church, long been a source of stress and discussion. It is a current work in progress, but if you've got any ideas of how we could improve our welcome to people passing by, then do say. And when we do come back to our church building, it's possible, in fact very likely, that we'll be asking people to wash their hands on the way in and out, and asking them to sit apart from one another without any singing, certainly no hello hugs or sharing of the peace in the usual manner. So how are we going to still make people feel welcome in the midst of all that? There's so much to think about, but it's one of the things that we all have a calling to, and we all have a ministry in. Because none of the websites, notice boards or newsletters in the world can really do justice to God's welcome like we can. We are his welcome to those who don't know him yet. Unlikely, inadequate, downright inept, some of us might feel that but it's true. We are his welcome, right from the beginning of God's story in the world. In Genesis chapter 12, God called Abraham to be a blessing to the nations. God blessed Abraham in order that he would go and bless others. And that's how we're still called to be his welcome today. In the reading that we heard from the Old Testament, Jeremiah's telling of the wonderful time to come when God's people will return from exile. And Jeremiah speaks of the ultimate special one who will be coming to prophesy above all a message of peace. We laugh, don't we, and think of the old beauty queen competitions when people say their heart's desire is to achieve world peace. But wouldn't that actually be our best token of welcome to all people everywhere, regardless of creed or colour or religion, to share God's peace? Jeremiah said, "As for the prophet who prophesies peace, when the word of that prophet comes true, then it will be known that the Lord has truly sent the prophet." So if we truly believe in the Jesus who will come again, or who already lives amongst us now, shouldn't we be striving to bring that peace as part of his welcome? Peace, and sharing God's peace and therefore his love with others, is perhaps the greatest calling of all. And without doubt, over the last few weeks of lockdown, we've seen countless acts of love and peace and good neighbourliness, not just in Grenoside, but all over our country and all over the world. But how do we make our acts of love and peace distinctly God-flavoured, if you like? These are big responsibilities, bringing peace and welcome on God's behalf. But aren't they part of the cost of our discipleship? But how do we as disciples ensure that we can sustain that offer of peace and love in the name of the one who calls us and sends us? Whatever the world throws at us, pandemics, drought, war and famine, I think the difference in our neighbourliness, in our acts of love and peace, is that they are underpinned by a complete reliance on the one who offers every single one of us that welcome, not just in this life, but in all eternity. It is that very special relationship of welcome between us and Jesus that brings us true peace, isn't it? So therefore, as well as focusing on the ongoing importance of our welcome to others, we need to put that time and space aside to regularly welcome Jesus into our hearts. So whatever you do this week, put some time aside to repeatedly offer that welcome to him, just you on your own. And in the words of Anne Lewin, you do not have to look for anything, just look. You do not have to listen for specific sounds, just listen. You do not have to accomplish anything, just be. And in the looking and the listening and the being, find me. Only then can we be the instruments of his peace and the heralders of his unparalleled welcome. Amen. Let us pray. Father God, thank you for welcoming us just as we are, tired, confused, happy, sad, angry, excited, in our pyjamas or in a suit and tie. Guide us to make your welcome felt by all those around us who don't know your unconditional welcome yet. Strengthen us to rely on you to give us the courage, the words and the wisdom to know how we should do that wherever we find ourselves this week, this month, this year. And remind us that you are the eternal one who was always there to welcome us home. Amen.